Women's sport does not deserve an equal pay.
I can't comment on it. I don't really know.
When time was not favorable with you, what thing you used to do to make yourself stronger?
I made sure that I always had a plan
What does it feel to be a world champion?
for that one moment in time. You are the best in the world at something. And I met one of the NBA players, Dwight Howard, and he and I were looking at the gold medal, and he was so happy for me.
So today's episode is quite special for me because the person that is joining in this show is actually a two-time Olympic gold medalist and a five times world champion. Please let me welcome legendary rower Susan Francia to this show. Susan, welcome to Chill Talks with Kritik.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much, Susan. And how are you doing now?
I'm doing great. I'm out here in sunny San Diego, California, and I have no complaints. And it's Friday.
Well, that's great. And how are Beer and Willow doing?
Oh, they're doing well. They're off to school already.
Do they get along or are they involved in the regular sibling fights?
Hmm. Well, they're still pretty young. The Willow's very close to 2, and Bear's a little, almost 4. So they get along really well. They're they're like two peas in a pod. Yeah, they're good friends.
So, as a mother, it's quite easy for you then.
Oh yeah. No.
Well, pretty lucky thing then.
Yeah. Actually, nothing really prepares you for how to be a parent and how to be a good parent, but instincts kick in. And, I thought that being an Olympian was, one of the toughest things that I'd ever endured. But then I became a parent and I learned what it's really like to be tired and to have to work. So, yeah.
And do you think that parenthood is also one of the greatest gift?
Oh, absolutely. It is. But, it's a certain type of gift. Like that's, you're giving your heart and soul and sharing that. But it's also, even like being career oriented, or, for me, having gone for the Olympics and the gold, those are all almost just like a different type of kind of fulfillment.
Well, as just to talk about your Olympic journey, and as a normal person perspective, I just wanted to know from you is like, what does it feel to be a world champion? Well, this question is very simple, but it has a very deep meaning inside it. I mean, how does it feel to be a world champion?
It's very amazing because for that one moment in time, you are the best in the world at something. And that is very rare. And even now, it's wonderful to be a parent. And luckily, I have a lot of people who are also parents around me. But that is being a world champion's different. It's like, it's very unique. Um, and getting to be on top of the podium is incredible, knowing like all the work that you put into it, all the sacrifices, and you're like, okay, all right, I'm here, I did it.
Sometimes, don't you feel that being an athlete is quite a thankless job?
I mean, honestly, I was doing it for myself to prove to myself that I could do it. So I didn't really need thanks. And even if there had been nobody in the stands to cheer, that wouldn't bother me, because though I love being an inspiration to, younger athletes and everything, was really doing it to really test myself. So it's almost like, in a way, it's a little bit of a selfish type that I feel very lucky that I had the opportunity to do. Because there are a lot of things that, it does cost some money. And, I was living with a host family and just trying to scrape by. But I was there for one goal and I was able to achieve it.
But you said that you were quite lucky.
No, mm not necessarily luck. You make your own luck. So you're right. So I was lucky that I got to have the circumstances of two supportive parents. But I think that when people have that kind of dream and goal, I've seen people come out of the ashes, to make something happen. And I think actually a lot of times when people don't have wonderful circumstances, that almost propels them to be great, even more so because they're like, you know what? I've got nothing to lose. I'm going to put everything into it. So I've seen some really amazing athletes, come from, what they would say they came out of nothing.
But when you talked about the support from your parents, like if we see your family background, then whole world knows about your mom, a great scientist, and a very huge respect to her. And if we see children, they generally follow the profession of the parents they are mostly involved. But talking about yours, I mean, it's completely different. Like you have completely chosen a different path. I mean, how did you thought of becoming an athlete, coming to the sports field instead of following your parents' footstep? I mean, it's quite different, and no parents gave any interest about it. So, how did you thought of coming in the sports field?
Yeah, I would say, I didn't expect to become an athlete. I actually wasn't very athletic. I mean, I was athletic growing up, but I just wasn't very good at any one thing. Um, but my mom always was encouraging me, like you're saying, parents and children kind of, they usually go along the same lines. My mom very much encouraged me in academically and in school, and I was a good student, but actually, even the reason I started rowing was to become a better student to help give me some structure. And then it just so happened that it was like, okay, well, actually, you're pretty good at this. Maybe you can become an athlete. And then I was able to pivot. But for my mom, even, all the support that she gave me, she still made sure that at the end of the day, you have to be a good student. Even if you're off rowing, that's still the priority.
And did your mom not tell you to come to her lab and get involved in her experiments?
When I was little, yes, that's where I would spend my spring breaks with my mom in the lab. So, though I did enjoy it, I just wasn't sure that that would be the path for me.
So, and talking about the rowing, so what do you think that rowing actually taught you in your life that you have been following inside the boat and outside the boat life?
Rowing teaches you about the grind. I was talking about like, oh, what people see at the Olympics, that's 6 minutes, and then they see the glory, right? But there's so much, there's the 10 years that go into that. And you have to love that kind of hard work. So that would be the one thing that one big thing that I learned about, okay, love what you're doing. It's hard. No one's there cheering for you. You have to cheer for yourself. And the other really important thing is teamwork to be successful in rowing. And then also now I see it in my more corporate job. It's very important to be able to work with the team, work within a team, be able to balance different personalities and try and get everyone going towards a common goal.
And talking about your rowing life, what is the best experience that you'd love to share to everyone, excluding the gold medal part?
I actually had a really, really cool experience after we won in Beijing in 2008. Um, the day afterwards, I was in the Olympic Village, and I had my gold medal with me, and I met one of the NBA players, Dwight Howard, and he and I were looking at the gold medal, and he was so happy for me, and he ended up putting the gold medal around his neck. And he's looking at the gold medal, and we're kind of like joking about it. He's like, wow. And then Kobe Bryant actually came over and was said to Dwight like, "Hey man, where'd you get that?" And Dwight is like, "Oh, this is hers." And he's like, "Oh, hi, who are you?" And I was just so captivated by Kobe. He was this, big NBA star, and the two, these two basketball players are now looking at my gold medal, and it was just such a surreal moment for me, and really captured for me what the Olympics means. And for that one moment, even though those guys had so much money and, they're so successful, so famous, but they actually wanted, for one moment in time, something I had, and at the time they didn't. A few days later, of course, they went and won the gold, but that was a really, really cool experience for me, is just seeing the magic and the impact of winning that gold. So similar to the Nepalese athlete who won the bronze. I mean, it just was like so surreal.
Yeah, definitely. Our country celebrated it like a festival here, and it was a very great moment for us winning the medal for the first time. And do you still think of returning back to the games?
um, every once in a while I'm like, oh, could I do it? I do think about could I do it? And then I'm like, no, no, I don't know if I could go back to working out 3 times a day. But also, you really have to have a full fire. You have to be all in. You have to be so motivated because there are so many more hard days than there are easy or like good days, and you have to really want it. And I think that's when I knew that it was time for me to retire. When I was just felt like tired mentally of it. I was like, you know what? I think I'm done. Because again, if you're not in 110%, you're just not going to make it as an athlete.
Yeah, because for an athlete, it's very difficult to make a decision of retirement, because I believe that it's the most hardest thing in their entire life. And we all know that an athlete's career is very short term career. There is no permanent thing there. And we also know that it's a very thankless job. And after the retirement, a complete new life starts there. So you yourself as an athlete, after your retirement, how did you cope up with your new life?
Yeah, and that's a great question, and a lot of athletes really struggle with that. And honestly, the best route, in my opinion, is going into coaching, because I think it's really important to give back in a sport that gave me so much. And I wanted to have an impact on other athletes and some, the youth. Um, so I started working with high school athletes, high school women, and it was really, really incredible. I learned a lot about myself, and it also really helped put things into perspective for me. So before, sometimes, I'd be upset as an athlete. Why did the coach make a certain decision? Why this? Why that? And now when I'm the one sitting in the coaching boat and making these decisions, then it like would occur to me like, well, of course I'm gonna put you here. I needed someone you there. So like as an athlete, you overanalyze, and then as a coach, you're just trying to make the best decision in that moment. So it really helped kind of complete my athletic journey. Um, and then also it really helped kind of launch me into my next kind of more, typical office environment, leading a team, which was a little different from coaching, but also incredibly similar. And there were just a lot of benefits that I saw from that whole journey.
Yeah. And did you watch this year's Olympic, especially the rowing?
hmm I watched it. I watched everything. It was great.
And how did you felt about your team? Because in your time, you had won the gold medal, and in 2020, I guess it was a pretty bad time there. But now, uh, in this year, it was somehow satisfying, I guess.
Yeah, so 2016 was the last time that the women won the gold. Um, and it's a competitive sport, and it's interesting to see how different countries come up and they go down, and sometimes they compete and are competitive in other boat classes. So honestly, it's they gave their best effort. I was bummed. I really wanted to see them get a medal, but LA 2028, the racing will be on our home waters, so it'll be exciting to see how they do.
Thinking of coaching the team for that time?
No, no, no. I will leave that to the experts. I am certainly not that level coach. I'm good at like getting everybody like fired up and yay, let's go. Come on, kids. On the Olympic level, you that kind of fire is all very internal, so I will let the experts do that.
And so when people talk about sports, the first thing that comes into the mind is either football or basketball. And if we see rowing and other water related sports, we find that still these games are not given as priority as it needs to be. Do you think the same?
Yeah, I mean, it's all what people want to and are willing to watch. But I think there's always opportunity for it to change and shift. You look at the WNBA and the success that they've had, and there's so much more viewership, and I think that that's exciting, and it's fun to bring all of these new fans into that type of like women's sports in general, and also to that as a professional league. For rowing, I understand that it's not as watchable of a sport, like my parents would always joke like, "Oh yes, we saw you for 5 seconds go by," you know, um, which is fine, and it just even it's interesting though because in some countries, in England, for example, rowing is much bigger and it's a bigger media sport, and also in the U.S. in the early 1900s, actually, rowing was huge because they would bet on it. So times change, and it's okay. I'm sure rowing will have its heyday again.
And in rowing, which previously used to be a complete male dominated sport, so right now the women participation is also going greatly right now. So what are your thoughts about the gender equality in sports, in rowing and also in other games? Like, how do you think that women can be encouraged to participate and pursue their career in sports sector, especially in the growing economies where sports are not that much popular?
Yeah. So I think in the US, we I felt very equal. In fact, we even have laws in place, Title IX, which makes sure that, in collegiate sports, there's equal funding, there's equal teams. So in the US, we've been, had that success. And I think that that's why women's sports have grown. Now, in other countries, I think it's an uphill battle. Um, and I think what helps is when even there's one person, two people, and it starts to kind of grow, and these women can be like breakthrough athletes, and you see them at the Olympics, and now all of a sudden a little girl is watching on the TV, and the woman's the flag bearer, and they're like, okay, well, I want to do that, and it starts small, and it's oftentimes hardest for those first couple people to break into that sport, um, no matter what it is, and they have to be pioneers, and I think it's really I hope it continues to be encouraged for those women's sports to grow.
Like you talked about the thing called equal pay. In US, it's very strictly followed. Equal pay is given highly preference there. But in many parts of the world, people still have a very negative thinking about the equal pay. Like they say that, oh, women's sports, it brings very less number of money for them. So why should we support equal pay? So do you also think the same?
I can't comment on it. I don't really know what the situation is elsewhere in terms of pay. I know as a rower, neither the women nor the men got really paid very well. So I can only speak about my experience, and you know, we were both not paid great, but it's paid from the US Olympic Committee. They're a nonprofit. We don't have government support, and a lot of us had side jobs, and that's just how it was.
I'm actually talking about the general sports because the most popular sports in the world are actually the male dominated games. And that thing we rarely see in women's sport because, especially if we talk about the viewership in stadium, and sometimes it seems that women's sports are kind of getting mistreated. They are not getting the treatment that they need to. And well, it's harsh, but it's the reality. And that's why people say that women's sport does not deserve an equal pay. And so that thing can bring some sort of controversy. And that's why I was telling that. So do you also think the same?
Yeah. I don't have that. I My experience was different again. No one got paid, so um yeah, I think that really if the main goal is to get more girls and women involved in sports, even if it's not at a high level, but to help them grow that confidence, help them learn teamwork and hard work. And honestly, I think that that's really the biggest goal of having those women in sports. I mean, I know it's men, and I think maybe it's more on the entertainment level. So it's like those the soccer players, but yeah,
And when we talk about any sports, one thing that comes into our mind is definitely the physical strength. And we also know that without a proper physical health, we cannot compete into any sports. Physical strength must be there. Without a proper physical health, you cannot compete and you cannot get a proper time. But one thing that I feel is mental strength, it is not given as priority as it needs to be given, because you also need to be mentally fit if you need to play any game. So as per your experience, what are your opinions about the mental strength?
yeah, I think the mental strength is key because as I mentioned, there are going to be so many more tough days and hard days than the glory being on top of the podium days. And I think you need to really have that deep down motivation, and you need to work through sometimes a lot of challenges, whether it's like injuries or a hard day of testing and where you're really pushing yourself. But that's also, the beauty of it is being able to overcome those challenges.
And emotional support, how much do you think it is needed there?
I think it's very important. I mean, emotional support and support from your friends and family is important. Honestly, the drive needs to come from inside, and that is you're the only one that can, forge ahead. Of course, it's very nice and it's very comforting to have, emotional and the feel like you have that community around you, but it's your inner drive that's gonna lead to your success.
So during your times of failure and the moment when time was not favorable with you, what thing you used to do to make yourself stronger?
Yeah, I made sure that I always had a plan, and even if I'm injured or something, all right, then maybe I can be on the bike, or I can do more stretching, or I can do more core exercises, or what's I always had to look forward to, like, what can I do right now in this moment to help me tomorrow? And even if I'm limited in like all these different ways, there is always something that I can be doing to make me better and try and focus on that.
So I was actually studying one survey and I found that Athletes today are not as responsible as they used to be around 10, 20, or 30 years before. Well, there are many scientific equipments, new technologies have been added in the sports field, but athletes today are not giving their optimal mark that they need to give. Uh, do you also have the same view regarding that?
Well, this actually happened also a little bit in rowing. We ended up with much more technology and much better tracking with like digital heart rate, speed, I mean, all these different components. And I think it's up to a coach to recognize when there's like when you need data and you need immediate numbers and feedback and what even that means, and then also when you need to just take away those components and, just row or have boat feel, things that you can't really quantify, but that are very necessary. Or in our sport, also team chemistry. That's not something that you can draw up on numbers. Like that's just something that, comes with time and you kind of feel out who is where. That's almost an unmeasurable sort of I don't know, just data point. That's also data, but but not that's like right in front of your face. And so I think it's up to the coach to decide on when you need it and when it's important.
And about the players, do they also have any kind of responsibility there?
Yeah, I mean the coach with also some athlete feedback. I think that's also important is, the athlete giving feedback on what they need and what they feel will help motivate them.
And so, as you are currently involved in the corporate sector, and me myself also being a part of the corporate world, uh, what I saw there is like in a corporate sector, you make your own decision yourself. You are the alone person, and the decision that you make is completely based on yourself. Well, if you make a bad decision, then you are the one who suffers the most. And whereas in the rowing field, in the team sports, if even a single person commits a mistake, the whole team suffers there. So, what do you feel is actually challenging? One person making mistake, everyone suffers, or you yourself make the mistake and you only suffer?
Well, I always loved being a part of a team, and yes, you are right. It is a risk, but it's also very much a high reward. Like this is why training together and understanding this is almost like that unmeasurable thing, right? That chemistry. And knowing also that at the end of the day, we win together or we fail together. And we have to recognize that, all right, if we fail together, it's not one person, it's all of us as a team. What could we have all done better to make us be successful? And then it's on the flip side, same thing. When we succeed, we also have to recognize there are no stars. Everybody contributed the maximum that they could do, and we were all in it together to get that goal.
And in the leadership role, what is the major problem that you think that you have faced there?
Yeah, in leadership, it's interesting because in rowing leadership, you can be kind of hard on athletes because there's always movement and people want to be, the best. It's a little bit different in a corporate because you're not just going to start firing people and hiring and firing. Like it's a little bit it's not quite as it is cutthroat, but it's not quite as cutthroat. And on the leadership side, you have to manage a little bit better from just being very like hard and straightforward, but you also have to be like, hey, this is how let's kind of keep growing here. What can we, just do a little bit better on the, as a group.
Yes, so I have read one story where it was said that you cannot be successful in this generation uh, if you cannot work in group. And I guess you are a complete prime example for this because you work in that sport that is completely interdependent to each other, and it teaches you like, yes, this is the right thing, and I am not only the part. Everyone has a crucial role in this, and that is the very interesting thing about that.
Yeah, and that's just for like my instance and my experience. I know that there are people who entrepreneurs and you can be your own person and you can have success. So it doesn't need to be that it's for everybody. It just needs to be that if you decide that you are a lonely island and you are going to be successful on your own, that's fine, but just be prepared that you're going to have to, do it all yourself and maybe do all the jobs that you don't want to do or, the ones that you're not quite ready for. But this is where also even as you grow as a company, for example, you can't do it all yourself, and now you have to rely on other people, have to be able to have that respect and understanding that, hey, we're all going to work together so that we can have that common goal, that common success.
So before I wrap up this show, the thing that I want to ask you is that while you reflect your rowing career and your legacy that you have left behind, what do you think uh, people, especially the younger ones who are thinking of becoming an athlete, a younger athlete, should take away from your story?
Yeah, I would say that you need a passion that's, unrelenting, that can't be shaken, and your drive you need to be all in with your goals. Because if you're not, then someone who is more dedicated will take that top spot. So I think, again, it's that everyone can dream, they can have big, lofty goals, but you also have to recognize that you have to put in all of that work and time and energy, and you're not going to have the glory and the flowers and all those things until you put in all of those things. And it's small building blocks, which is good. It's not an insurmountable goal, but it's these all smaller things that you can put in every day to help achieve that goal.
So that's it. It's the end of our show. So thank you so much, Susan, for your time. It was great talking to you. I guess our viewers also learned a lot of new things from you. Thank you so much for your valuable time.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kritik. It's been wonderful to meet you. And when I come to Nepal, I hope to see you.